This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. It's a little overcast, but, it's not terrible out, I suppose, so far. But it's also the Sunday of a 3-day weekend. Yay! At least those of us that have Monday off for Labor Day. If you have Monday off, congratulations. If you don't, you have my sympathies. But I hope you have a good Monday either way. But as for Sunday, as I clear my throat, because apparently my voice still hasn't woken up today, like the rest of me. Who's joining me for this adventure today? I'll get into in a moment with a unfortunately mistitled title from the host. Just real quick, on the YouTube channel, it was quoted as D.E.I 2.1. I didn't know where 2.0 went, but I was like, oh, 2.1. But apparently the official title is 2.0. And if I'd known that, I would have changed the title. So I was misled. I was misled, but I'm not going to change it because that's the way it is, as Walter Cronkite used to say. And if you know who Walter Cronkite is, you're old. And if you don't, you have my jealousy. Who's joining me? Doesn't matter. Mike R., hello. Noah Essentio, hello. Plague Doctor. See, I was conditioned. to say Plague Doctor. Plague Trucker, Zach. He's had a career change. Keeverdam, good morning. Funtime Bats, good morning. Who else is here? Mike Savage, good morning. Old Guy Gamer, good morning. Eagle, good morning. You ever hear of Eagle the Ghost from Funhouse? It's a funny little bit. If you can find Eagle the Ghost, Funhouse, H-A-U-S. It's a funny bit. I thought it was funny anyway. Nathan Willie, good morning. Advocast Diabli, good morning. Grand Inquisitor Tyr Alexander, good morning. Stoka, good morning. Who else is here? Blakester, good morning. You're Ridiculous Lunatic, good morning. And then chat jump, because of course it did. Felda, good morning. Robert Pincus, good morning. And John Miller, good morning. Anybody else? I think that's everybody I see. If I've missed you, if you're lurking, if you're in the future, good morning. Yeah, so today, someplace I have not visited in quite a while. There was a time, a long, long time ago, where I take a look at what were effectively TED Talks presented by Google called Talks at Google. And if you say it fast enough, it sounds like Toxic Google. But I haven't looked at Google in quite a while. But I came across this just yesterday. A DEI keynote presentation, Targeted Universalism, DEI 2.0. So, I know what DEI is, at least on any particular day. 2.0, I figure they're like, okay, we have to reimagine it because of certain recent events. Targeted Universalism. All right, that's a phrase I'm not familiar with, and I didn't look it up ahead of time. I want to know from our speakers what that means as far as the context of DEI. Targeted Universalism. It sounds vaguely religious or spiritualist, but Targeted Universalism. Is that like missionary work? Evangelizing to specific people or something? I don't know. I'm trying to do a whole spelling bee deconstruction of the phrase kind of thing, but I hadn't heard that phrase before, so I'm happy to learn something new. Just like last time, racial concordance. You guys remember racial concordance? I remember racial concordance. Anyway, Nathaniel Rotskull is also here. And Shadowclaw, good morning. Resolute Germ, good morning. Stig Helmer, good morning. And I hope I've gotten everyone that I've seen so far. Anyway, let's get into it because just after I'm done here, I'm hanging out with Sister Scribe, so I'm looking forward to that. This clocks in at just over 46 minutes. 6 minutes. I'll be going for an hour and a half in real time, and we'll learn presumably from Google Cloud, about DEI 2.0, targeted universalism. Boy, oh boy, I'm ready to be educated. How about you?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. 3 people on the stage, except it's still morning here. You guys hear that all right? Let me know. I have my morning water with me here to make sure I don't start coughing up a storm or anything. Heard it, says Keeverdam. Also, before I forget, sorry, Keeverdam, yes. At the top of the chat box, everybody, there are the fundraisers for our friends Joshua, Maddie, and Lisa. Joshua has had some wage garnishment coming his way because of some past rental problems and things. Maddie is in need of some help with some deductibles for cancer treatment, so please take a look at that one as well. And lastly, Lisa and her boyfriend need some help paying for their puppy's medical concerns. So if you take a look at those, if you can donate, please do so. If you can't, that's fine. But if you can, share those out on social media. That is very much appreciated. So thank you so much, Keeverdam, for posting those as always. And thanks ahead of time for anybody who donates and or shares. All right. Good afternoon.
Welcome to the Google Cloud Next 23 DEI keynote focused on targeted universalism, which is really DEI 2.0.
Okay, so DEI 2.0, targeted universalism. All right, so version 1.0 is, corporate, racial, and or gender discrimination most of the time without really saying so, but then really saying so with quotas and not having any consequences come your way. And then, of course, the affirmative action decision comes down, and suddenly everybody cares about DEI for some reason. So now we have to go for targeted universalism. What is that?
I'm Melanie Parker. I'm Google's Chief Diversity Officer.
Hey!
And I am so excited to be here with you today.
I'm excited that you're excited, and I'm glad we have a Chief Diversity Officer of Google. I don't know that I've come across her specifically before. I've only done a couple of things directly on Google's corporate diversity program. So
I'm here with 2 incredible people that I'm going to introduce.
Yeah.
First, John A. Powell is a law professor, director of the UC Berkeley Othering and Belonging Institute.
Oh, the UC Berkeley Othering and Belonging Institute. Oh, that was brought up. That was brought up in one of the videos I looked at. I think it was that podcast about what UC Davis or UC Berkeley or whatever we're doing regarding affirmative action. I had meant to look them up to see if I could find a video. Well, this is convenient. Yes, the Othering and Belonging Institute. Oh boy, it's a small world, isn't it?
John comes from an incredible background of championing DEI prior to Berkeley, including his time as the National Legal Director for ACLU.
Oh man, what a combination.
The founder and director of the Institute on Race and Poverty and the University of Minnesota. And John also served as the executive director of the Kirwan Institute for the Study of Race and Ethnicity at Ohio State University.
Wow, somebody who is inordinately focused on race. Like, inordinately focused on race. That's great. I couldn't have asked for a better perspective. Also, TC, good morning. And did I see somebody else? Scanner Daftly, good morning.
Additionally, I'm joined by Juan Rajalan, who is Google's Alphabet and VP and Treasurer. Juan and I have partnered together on a number of projects to advance DEI.
Oh, great.
He spearheads many of Google's efforts to create economic opportunity for communities in truly an equitable way.
Okay. Economic opportunities for communities in truly an equitable way. Okay. I love equity. I really love equity. I'd love to know how. And Google has unlimited funds, so I'm sure they're doing great things equitably.
Through impact investments.
Impact. Okay. I know I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. Impact, as a catch-all term, is becoming more and more prevalent as time goes on here, and especially in the last few months that I've noticed, both in terms of job titles and as a buzzword. when it comes to DEI, equity work, and so on. So let's just all sort of keep in mind for the future as we see how much more and in what ways impact becomes a go-to for these conversations.
And outside of his very busy role as the treasurer of Google, Juan also represents Google on the corporate boards of Unidos US, which is the largest Latino civil rights organization in the United States, as well as co-leading DEI for our Google finance function. And then Juan also co-heads our Pride at Google Employee Resource Group.
Oh boy, employee resource groups, yay! Boy, these guys are all over the place. When do they find time for, like, real life? Jeez Louise. All right, so ERGs, equity, resources, oh boy, impact.
Which supports our LGBTQ plus community.
Right.
So today's discussion is really going to be a powerful one. We're going to dive into many aspects of DEI with a particular focus on belonging, on creating impact. And we're going to talk about what does the future of diversity, equity, and inclusion look like, and how can all of you help move the needle towards what we're calling DEI 2.0 in both your professional but your personal lives as well.
Oh, man. Oh, this is going to be so great. I am so happy. I cannot wait to learn what the next evolution of DEI is going to be, driven by one of the richest and most influential companies on the planet. Oh, man, if you need a bellwether as to where the thinking on DEI is going, you couldn't ask for a more perfect example. All right, everybody strap in. This is going to be something else.
So we're going to get this conversation started.
Yep.
But before we really dive into the heart of the conversation, I thought it would be really important just to share a little bit about myself for those of you that are visually impaired.
Okay. We've come across this before, and I keep meaning to, like, ask her, because I strangely enough, I only know a couple of blind people in my life, people who actually are blind. And I've always been curious. And, maybe if, I don't know if Pincalo's in the chat secretly or something, but I should really ask her sometime, because one of my YouTube friends, Blind Press, she's, well, blind. And I've always been curious, when it comes to these kind of things, these presentations and things, is it of any use or importance to visually impaired or blind people to hear the details of what the speakers look like in the course of a presentation? I mean, it does no harm. Let me put it this way. It does no harm. I just find it a little, I don't know. Is it of any use? Does it help anybody in any particular way? I don't know. Just for some reason, it feels kind of coddling, especially given the format. But maybe that's just me. I'm not blind. I don't know. Also, Keeverdam, thank you for putting Blind Press's YouTube channel link in the chat. If you don't know about Blind Press, let me tell you a little bit. Blind Press has no eyeballs. The story about how that happened is one of the most infuriating things ever. Happened when she was a little baby, basically. But it's her story to tell, so I'll leave it for that. But in her pastimes, amongst other things about being a wife and a mother and everything else, she also plays Mortal Kombat competitively against both sighted players and other blind players. And she's pretty good, which is incredible in and of itself. So if you don't know about Blind Press, go take a look at her channel there on the chat. And and at some point, I'm going to have to, like, sit down and talk with her about some of these things. Maybe if I find another TEDx about visual impairment or something, I can have her on as a co-host and we can figure that out. But that's a note for another day. But thank you, Derek LaRue, so much, as always, for your continued generosity and support. Hope you're having a good Sunday so far and you enjoy the show. And thanks again. All right. Anyway.
I am a Black woman. I have on a blush-colored dress. I have shoulder length, dark brown hair. In addition to that, though, I am a mom.
That's irrelevant.
I'm a daughter.
Irrelevant.
I'm a brand new Gigi to my granddaughter, Noelle. I'm a knitter. I'm a quilter.
Oh, okay.
And so that's just a little bit about who I am. And
Yay.
so, John and Juan, I'm going to turn it to you to share a little bit about who you are.
Scanner Daphne in the chat. How would a blind person know what blush colored is? Well, I guess it depends on when someone became blind. But, okay, so great. Mini biographies. Fine.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here. I'll share a little bit about myself.
Okay.
As Melody said, I teach over at UC Berkeley and run the Institute.
Uh-huh.
I also have 3 children.
Uh-huh.
And for those who can't see me sitting down, I'm tall, a little over 6 feet, about 6'3", African American. I use mainly he, him pronouns.
Oh, thank goodness. I was worried I wouldn't know how to think about you for a second there.
I used to be a world-class runner. You wouldn't know it if you saw me walking across the stage today, but it's true. It was just a long, long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really a delight to be here.
Okay.
All right. I'm delighted to be here with all of you. So I'm a gay man. So
I'm sure blind people really need to know that part too.
I use the pronouns he, him.
Great.
Originally from Argentina.
Uh-huh.
Came to this country 25 years ago for school. And so I'm an immigrant as well.
And you know what? You know what's interesting? None of the things he's listed off so far tells me anything about him as an individual. Right? Such surface level identity politics. Yeah.
And a member of our Latino community in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also a dad of a beautiful 6-year-old daughter.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you. Well, I thought we'd start by hearing a little bit about how did each of you really get into the important work that we do in diversity, equity, and inclusion? And in talking about that, if you could talk about, like, what have you seen around the evolution of DEI itself as you began your involvement in the space?
I've seen the evolution of terminology and the reduction of fear in being blunt about what the aims, goals, and ends are of D&I or D.E.I or J.E.D.I or D.E.I.B or D.E.I.A, or, as I've seen recently put, IDEA, inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. Now, I'd always pushed for DEBI for Debbie, but now they've come up with IDEA, and they've uncentered diversity from that particular configuration. And I think I might know why. But yeah, so the actual terminology referring to what it is has changed quite a bit over the years. And as I said, the hesitation in being very explicit about the goals and ends of DEI has changed. In the early days, you'd hear diversity officers being very cautious, using very couched language to talk about what it is that diversity was and what the ends were and what they were trying to do. But in quick order, really, you started to see those filters fall down. And as I've put it before, it was sort of like Puxatawny Phil poking his head up and looking around for his shadow. It almost seemed as though they were waiting to see, are we going to get in trouble for this? Is anything going to come down on us if we establish like percentile quotas based on demographics? I mean, that is illegal, but is anybody saying anything? Is the EEOC coming down on us? No, we have the support of the media. We have the support of politicians. Nobody's calling out DEI for its inherent problems with the law and or the principles of this country. So I guess we'll just keep going. Nobody's stopping us. It's one of the examples of moral hazard at play. Now, if you continue to do something bad, but no bad consequences come about from it, you have no incentive to stop doing it. That's the evolution that I've seen as an observer. But let's see what our speakers say.
And so, John, we can start with you.
You know, it's interesting to think about the evolution of DEI. I was just at an event with Melody a few weeks ago, and they sort of mapped out how in the 70s and 80s, we talked about tolerance and involvement. No one uses that phrase anymore. We moved beyond tolerance. And then we talked about diversity. And at some point, someone said, diversity by itself is not enough. We need inclusion and we need equity. So I think it's a natural evolution. And for myself, I've been part of virtually all those evolutions, going back to high school.
Okay, well, it all sounds nice, right? The DPRK, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. It all sounds very nice. What goes into it, though? That's the question.
And I say to people oftentimes, the sort of evolution from inclusion, tolerance, to belonging.
Isn't it all just, changing? I used this phrase just the other day, changing deck chairs on the Titanic. You're just swapping out words for different words and making it feel like you've changed something or moved beyond something?
To me, it's sort of a natural evolution.
Uh-huh.
And I'm 6 of 9 children. I watched my siblings be tracked away from college prep, tracked into certain things. I was growing up in Detroit, so tracked into the automobile industry. And I knew it was wrong.
You knew it was wrong. Tracked away. Okay. Why was it wrong?
And as I grew, I found it was not just my family. It was happening to people all over the world. Finally, I'll say when I came here to Berkeley 11 years ago.
Wait. People all over the world were tracked to the auto industry? What?
To start this institute, there was 7 clusters, one on race, one on gender, one on sexual orientation, one on economics, one on religion. And I felt like they were all sort of dealing with something, but waving at each other. They didn't see the deep underlying common structure that they all were fighting, that they all were engaging. And to me, that deep underlying structure was a structure of being othered.
Okay. And so DEI in a employment context is going to do what about that? And
the solution to othering, as I say, is not saming, but belonging. So to me, that sort of evolution was a natural one. And
well, okay, wait. If the solution is not othering, it's saming. Or sorry, if the solution is not saming, then what is equity? What is equality of outcome except saming? What is lifting somebody up or pushing somebody down to make sure that nobody has any advantage or disadvantage over another except saming? Or am I missing something?
I think it goes back to, in some ways, when I was in high school.
Thank you. I mean, it also talks about pattern recognition and the patterns that you were able to see and recognize and how those have evolved as well, which is really important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Juan?
So for me, I would say my work with D.E.I started 10 years ago when I joined the board of an organization, it's a nonprofit called the Posse Foundation, which Melanie, you are a fellow board member of.
Oh, how coincidental. The Posse Foundation? Okay.
And it's an organization focused on giving broader access to kids to go to college. So we send kids in groups of 10 in posses to 60 of the top 100 schools in the US. And the notion is that the kids that with full scholarships, and the kids that posse sends to schools are typically overlooked by the traditional admissions process. Most are first generation. 80% are diverse, coming from diverse communities.
80% are diverse. All right. What qualifies someone as diverse versus not diverse? I know. I ask that question every time because I really want to know how they're divvying up people, and in this case, kids, for educational opportunities. And as soon as you start talking about diverse, I can only imagine on what elements of makeup they are deciding that someone is worthy of educational opportunities versus less worthy.
And the idea of this organization started when the founder had a conversation with a college dropout who said to her, I would have never dropped out of college if I had my posse with me.
That sounds like a you problem. I would have never dropped out of college if I'd had my posse with me. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I went to college without any kind of support structure. I was on my own, away from my social group where I grew up for the first time my entire life. I was absolutely 100% alone. And you know what happened? It was up to me to make a support structure for myself, whether it be people or activities or within myself. And I did. You know, I found my people because I took the chance and I took the initiative and I created a situation for myself that was sustainable. But okay, I can't do it by myself. Well, I don't know. To each their own, I suppose, but I think it's a test of one's maturity and survival skills, I suppose. I would never have dropped out of college. I think you probably still would have. I think there's probably more going on there than you just didn't have your posse with you.
And so that's the notion. And posse scholars graduate at a rate of 90%. By the time...
What subjects did they take? What disciplines did they aim for? They
are seniors. 80% of them are leading on campus. They're officers of campus organizations.
They're activists, perhaps.
So you could see how having a support system, having belonging, if you will, when you arrive at a place, if you're first generation, it's kind of a new place for you. You may look different than most of the students on campus.
And that's really important, what people look like.
It's very easy to feel othered and to feel like you don't belong, right?
It was very easy for me to feel like I didn't belong because I was in a completely different place. I didn't know anybody and I was all by myself. And I made do. Okay, I don't know. Something about this seems a little like that's your responsibility. Coming to a place with a support structure. I don't know. What is a more formative experience, do you think? Having to make your own decisions and find your own independence, or coming in with a cushion already? A tribe, a clique. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. This is a former ostracized and pariah nerd from elementary school up all the way through up until college, really. Then I started to make my own way. But
yet, if you have a group, if you have a support system, if you have belonging, you could feel comfortable. If you feel comfortable, you can gain confidence. If you gain confidence, you can start to contribute and then thrive, which is what happens to these kids. So I saw firsthand 10 years ago when I joined this organization, it wasn't called belonging 10 years ago, but that's what it was.
Yeah, and it wasn't called belonging 10 years ago. Yeah, it was called D&I. D&I. They added belonging just within the last year or two, I think.
And, the power of combining broader access to opportunity with a system where you can actually have a support system.
A broader access to opportunity as long as you are diverse.
And belonging. If you combine those two things, magic really happens. So that's the origin of my interest in, being involved in DEI. So here we are, excited for this conversation today.
Thank you. Me too. And I hope, I know you out in the audience are as well. So there are a few important topics that we're going to cover. And I thought it would be really important to start by reflecting on what's happened in the recent past few years and the impact that things like COVID, there's the Stop Asian Hate movement, the brutal murder of George Floyd.
None of these things have anything to do with DEI because DEI or variants thereof were occurring long before any of them.
And there are numerous other events that we could all point to that have changed the landscape of DEI, but also really put it under greater scrutiny.
Yes. As far as changing the landscape of DEI, these things have been used as excuses to further DEI. They've been used as reasons to justify extending and expanding DEI, even if they have absolutely no connection whatsoever to DEI. What happened to George Floyd has nothing to do with DEI. The pandemic had nothing to do with DEI. They try to make it about something other than what it is. They keep adding on new words: equity, inclusion, belonging, accessibility, justice, and on and on and on. But all of it resolves down to that first letter: discrimination. Diversity. Because it all comes from the same poison tree. You can try to keep adding on different concepts and all these other big words and try to make your resumes seem much more padded than they actually are. But at the end of the day, the mechanism you're relying upon is discrimination, right? Who is diverse? Who is not? Who is worthy of opportunity? Who isn't? Based on what? Their aesthetics primarily. But okay, let's go.
And so, recognize that not everybody experiences everything in the same way. And so even the things that I talked about, we've not all experienced them the same because we're different.
We are different? Okay, except for the things that bind us together. And what were those high-level categories again that tell us how to assess one another?
From different cities, different cultures, different backgrounds, et cetera, which is all really important to acknowledge. But I was thinking, John, if you could tell us about some of the ways you've seen a shift in how people have experienced diversity and inclusion in these moments.
I think that's really important. We're situated differently. And there's stuff going on in the country, in the world, that affects us differently.
Yes, this is a truism throughout time.
And how we talk about it, how we think about things matter. So, for example, you mentioned COVID. I worked a little bit with the World Health Organization, and
the World Health Organization, yes, a very reliable, trustworthy, and stalwart defender of people's rights and well-being.
As you know, when they first came out with COVID, they talked about social distance, to keep social distance. Yeah. And I literally wrote them and said, "You mean physical distance?"
Well, yes.
Need to have social solidarity. It was too late. The social distances are already out there. And that created this space where people were afraid of each other.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Fear was used against the world population to control them. You're correct. And in that regard, if you're expressing displeasure over that, I'm right there with you.
And we are radically social animals. Think about this. All of us were born attached to another human being.
Yeah. So what?
Not metaphorically, actually.
Yeah.
And even though the umbilical cord was cut, the spiritual cord was never cut.
The spiritual cord. Okay.
And yet we do these practices to say to certain people, you don't belong. And as Juan suggested, when you don't belong, you don't thrive. And so in some ways, when we think about COVID or George Floyd, these are all expressions saying not just you as an individual, but you and people who look like you, or people who worship like you, or people who love like you, they don't belong.
Whoa. Again, George Floyd has what to do with this situation? I don't know. As far as social distancing is concerned, okay, you want to talk about not belonging? All right, let's talk about, I don't know, who received the medicine. I'm being cagey here because I don't know what YouTube will do. And who chose to wait or not to. Got any thoughts on that? And I'm not taking sides on. I'm just the fact that people started valuing each other's existences on the basis of what their answer was to that question. over the course of the pandemic? How about that one? How about political divisions? Any of that? I really have to wonder. I wonder if we're going to get into it. If othering, if vilifying and demonizing someone over a effectively, inconsequential difference is something that our speaker is against, I'm there with him. Okay. I am absolutely for trying to find common ground with people and not dismissing someone or turning them into some kind of bad guy because of one disagreement or one difference of opinion or something. Okay. So if I say George Floyd's death has nothing to do with DEI, I wonder what our speaker would say of me. I just have to wonder, because that's where we're at. Some people are diverse and some people aren't. Some people are worthy of attention and some people are not. So the contradiction in his principles here is so stark between what he's saying and what DEI does. I don't know where he's coming from or where he's going.
Now, what's happening in terms of, I think, a backlash, which is happening, is that as the country becomes and the world becomes more diverse, some people who were used to being in a dominant role are saying, do I belong in this new world?
Okay. As the world and the country becomes more diverse, again, what does that mean? Who are you talking about? Why are you speaking in such couched language? We all know what you're talking about. Why are you avoiding it? Just say it, right? White people are scared. That's what you mean to say. Why aren't you saying it? If it's an absolute truth of demographics and societal shifts and everything else, why the fear in just saying it bluntly?
In a sense, the fight around DEI is a fight around who belongs.
Right. So if I have questions or doubts or oppose the basics of DEI, what does that make me? How would you categorize someone who sees assessing people on the basis of their skin color, let's say, as a bad thing, which DEI relies upon?
And what we say, and I'd like to paraphrase the Declaration of Independence.
Oh.
It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident.
Uh-huh.
It's not necessary to prove it. They're self-evident that all men are created equal. Okay, all right, so they screwed up. It should have been all people.
That's what men meant in the context of the time and the language. But, okay.
That's a powerful statement. Even though one of the authors of that was Thomas Jefferson and had 600 slaves. It's still a powerful statement.
Powerful statement. Even though this. Uh-huh. Yeah. It is a principle and a virtue that we are supposedly trying to fulfill as a country, bit by bit, day by day, over time, to form a more perfect union, and so on and so forth. But how does DEI and categorizing diverse versus non-diverse help us toward that end, do you think?
And what I think we're struggling with today is, can we say it is self-evident that every human being belongs?
It is belongs in what? What do you mean belongs? Like, I think everyone belongs in the family of humans, if that's what you mean. But I don't think that, say, I don't know, Ted Bundy belongs in society. Right? What do you mean?
That every human being belongs. And some people will say, of course. Other people would say, not so fast.
It depends on the context. Do I belong in, let's say, running a nuclear submarine? I mean, I've watched The Hunt for Red October a couple hundred times at this point. I'll just say a couple hundred. That's probably less than that, but still. But I probably don't belong running a nuclear submarine. What do you mean belong? What are you talking about?
I'll end just by thinking about the most important case, anti-civil rights case, you could say, in U.S. history is Dred Scott.
Uh-huh.
In that case, the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Taney said, Black people,
Yeah.
free or otherwise,
Yeah.
could never be part of the political community of the United States. Never.
So someone a long time ago said something that was blatantly racist and wrong, you say. And obviously Dred Scott, the precedent set therein, and the sentiments expressed, are how we operate today. Right?
You're saying they could never belong.
Yeah.
So in a sense, that struggle of who is the we, who belongs, who does not belong,
Uh-huh.
is powerful. It happens at Google, it happens at our church, it happens in our neighborhood.
Whoa. Okay. Dred Scott. Nothing's occurred since Dred Scott to shoot down that sentiment in our country, or attempt to. Okay. You're the one that just dodged dividing people up on the basis of their skin color by talking about majorities. You don't even have the confidence of your own convictions to say what you mean, but you're going to fall back on Dred Scott as proof of what? That I'm so
And to me, that's the battle that we have to fight, and it's punctuated when we think of things like COVID and George Floyd.
None of these things have anything to do with what you're talking about. Nothing. You didn't connect George Floyd to DEI. Tell me how DEI or the absence thereof had anything to do with George Floyd. Tell me how DEI or the absence thereof had anything to do with COVID. Okay, DEI used those events to leverage its position on a moral scale. That's it. They use the hype, they use the outrage as fuel to push their agenda. That's all I saw throughout the last 7 years. That's all I've seen with these events over and over, whether it's George Floyd or Michael Brown or all the riots, the Summer of Love, on and on and on and on and on. They're just used as excuses to push an agenda. And I still haven't heard anything that tells me that DEI 2.0 is going to be any different. So what is DEI 2.0? What is targeted universalism?
It's powerful.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing
real
that.
powerful.
Juan, I know you spend a lot of time thinking about and helping advance DEI across Google.
Good.
When you think about impacting change, what sort of shift did you see in how that was approached in response to some of these larger like cultural moments? And how do you perceive the importance of leadership from companies like Google?
Yeah, Google that has had a problem year over year actually achieving the same ends that they would demand or expect other companies. This is one of the issues that Google kept having, is that they push DEI and equity and diversity and inclusion and social justice and on and on and on for years. And yet in those years, and I don't think they do it anymore, in those years where they actually released their workforce demographic reports, it would show they were not meeting their own stated goals, ends, and principles, because the minority populations in their own workforce didn't move much at all between several years of tracking. And so by that evidence, right, you would have to assume, according to social justice and so on, that Google is an actively racist, discriminatory company. So how do you square that circle was the question I asked in previous videos on Google's stats.
Yeah, so I think for us, 2020 was a pivotal time, right? We had the pandemic first, and then in the spring, and then the murder of George Floyd in the summer.
You guys keep bringing up the pandemic and George Floyd. DEI was going strong before any of this happened. What do these have to do with anything?
We were, of course, sort of called to action as a result of what was going on.
Why?
And what we wanted to do was, ask ourselves, where can we have an impact given who we are, given our capabilities, our assets?
Where can you have an impact on the death of a man in a police action in Minneapolis and a global pandemic? Well, on the global pandemic side, I'm pretty sure Google could have had an impact and probably did in just communication and so on, because people were forced to isolate. But as far as DEI is concerned, I'm still waiting for the connection.
So very quickly, when the pandemic hit, we concluded small businesses were going to be, potentially have a devastating impact. Within small businesses, small businesses for, diverse communities were going to be, more vulnerable. And
right, because only small businesses in quote unquote diverse communities were ravaged by the lockdowns and the mandates and the restrictions. It wasn't a general economic line cut off of, if you're not a company that makes this much money or is in this particular field or is sustainable enough to survive a lockdown and having your customer base shuttled away from you. You know how many businesses just within walking distance of where I live, how many businesses populated and run by all sorts of people just disappeared? They couldn't sustain it. They couldn't sustain having no customers come into their stores, into their barbershops, right, into their restaurants. But okay, all right, you got to divvy everything up on demographics again.
Small businesses are such an important part of our products, giving our ecosystem. So that was an area that we felt we wanted to lean in. And then,
so did you only give preference to businesses based on the demographics of their owners in your concerns? I'm trying to figure out, where is the DEI in this? Because when we talk about small business, that says nothing about the look or condition of the owners other than the size of their concern.
The other area is digital skills. So in particular, when you think about jobs, 2/3 of job openings in the US today require some level of digital skills. So you can't think about jobs in this country unless you think about digital skills. So we felt that economic opportunity was a banner under which we could do work on both of these areas. And that's how.
What does that have to do with DEI?
That's where we focused. And we did it in a way where, in addition to our products, we also wanted to sort of do our part with our balance sheet as well. So overall, we committed, since 2020, almost $500 million in programs and investment funds that are, designed to support these areas.
Same question remains, and apologies for the pause game here. It's just, I have to keep pausing occasionally for the sake of transformative work and not letting anything run too long. I'm going to go to chat real quick because I see some people saying some stuff, and I want to just Scanner Daffley and Google actively participated in spreading lies about how the lockdowns were good and helped to spread inflated death counts. Yeah, there's also that too. A lot of Google. There's no harps or halos going on here. For as much money as Google may have invested in helping people, and I believe that they did, there was as much of a counterweight in pushing and increasing other people's misery by, I don't know, either being a conforming citizen or just, putting their profits ahead of people. It's hard to say. Let's see. Lexi Mads, look, I offered you all a place with me during COVID. My life barely changed. Just masks and clear plastic over checkout counters. Yeah, that's all. That's all that happened. Just that's it. That's it. Let's see. You're ridiculous. I changed precisely nothing during the COVID scare. I went to work every day, never wore a mask, nothing changed. Well, you're lucky. You're lucky. I was required to stay home. I was required to remote work. I would not be allowed into the grocery store. They actually had somebody standing around at the entrance making sure that people walked in with masks on. So my access to food and food supplies, I had to wear a mask. I took it off as soon as I was outside of the building, but I had to. It was just, looking back on it, such an insane period of time. Such an insane period of time. And it still lingers. It really does. This is long COVID. It's not the disease. It's the impact on our society, on people's paranoias, on people's psyches, and probably most devastating of all, to the both social and educational development of children. I don't know that we're going to get past this for many, many, many years, even if everything suddenly stopped today. If it all just kind of became the practical non-issue that it should have been. But
so, what are the kinds of things that we did? We set up a fund to support CDFIs, so Community Development Financial Institutions. We supported, it's a $180 million fund.
Community development, okay.
We supported 60 organizations, and then in turn, the CDFIs turn around and support small businesses, particularly in diverse communities.
See, I was hoping he wasn't going to put an addendum there, but he did. Particularly in diverse communities. So again, opportunity and benefit is weighed on the basis of someone's race and or ethnicity. How are you guys any better? You have the one speaker bring up Dred Scott, where you have a Supreme Court justice evaluating people on the basis of their skin color as lesser beings, as less important elements of society. And at the same time, you guys are deciding in an equitable fashion who gets to benefit from the largesse of Google's giant money pile on the basis of what they look like. Not just small businesses writ large, and that's the only barrier for entry. No. On top of that, are you the right look for our generosity?
So we helped over 130,000 small businesses. 40% were women-owned small businesses.
Okay, so you're sexist as well, all right.
Over 50% were small businesses owned by, diverse communities. So
yeah. Okay, all right. Oh, so, okay, so sexist and racist. Why do you keep saying diverse? Come on. Those in the majority, diverse communities. Just say what you mean. Tell us. I mean, you are telling us, but why at this late date, why bother couching your language? Really?
We're proud of that work. We thought CDFIs was the way to reach deeper into communities and sort of fill the gap where banks or other capital providers weren't providing the right capital access. So that's one example. Another example around small business is entrepreneurs. So
okay, maybe this is just the poverty of my vocabulary. What's the difference between someone who's running a small business and an entrepreneur? Isn't someone who starts a business in one way, shape, or form an entrepreneur? What's the differential there? Entrepreneur, a person who organizes and operates a business or businesses, taking on greater than normal financial risks in order to do so. Well, greater than normal financial risks. I'm not quite sure what greater than normal financial risks are, but if you're opening up a small business, it's all a financial risk. So isn't anybody who runs a business effectively an entrepreneur? Unless I guess they're in a business that has no risks, like, I don't know, Hedge funds. Oh, wait, no. Is there a business that has no risks? I suppose dishwashing and grave digging. There will always be a need for those two functions.
When you think about entrepreneurs, companies get started by venture capital funding, but only 3% of venture capital funding in the US goes to Black and Latino founders.
So you decided to fill that need by... Okay.
Yet we're almost a third of the population of the US. So 3% to a third.
And is it because they're actively racist, or is it because small business owners... I don't know. Why is that?
There's a huge gap.
There's a huge gap in who they're investing in. Okay, so venture capitalist firms are racist. Okay. And Google isn't, by focusing on people's race in the terms of opportunity. And so wait, you're excoriating venture capitalist firms for not investing enough in particular people on the basis of their skin color. And yet on the reverse side of things, you take pride in investing specifically in small businesses based on the gender and or race of the people running it. I'm 6 of one thing, half a dozen of the other.
In terms of, how equitable or not capital is distributed when it comes to venture capital. What
if their business plan sucks? Should every small business receive the same kind of scrutiny or same kind of generosity as every other small business just for being a small business? You want equality of outcome? Okay, well, what if out of 7 companies that come for funding, 5 of them have terrible business plans? Should I invest in all 7 just because they came to the table? Are there any other factors at all that you can think of when it comes to investing that might tell someone this is worth investing and this isn't? Did you look at anything else? Or are you so focused on race and ethnicity you can't see the forest for the trees?
Invested in funds that are looking to bridge this gap, and we also set up our own Black Founders Fund and Latino Founders Fund where we're directly funding companies.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to talk about Dred Scott again? You want to talk about venture capitalists choosing who to invest in on the basis of their... Okay.
And then the last...
Where's the Asian Founders Fund? Where's the Pacific Islanders Founders Fund? Where's the White Founders Fund? Huh? I mean, why not? Are you going to go all the way with this? Or are you going to be very selective and play favorites?
Example I'll mention is around digital skills. 5 years ago, we started a program of Google career certificates where without a degree required, you could take between 3 to 6 months online. You could take a course and earn a Google career certificate.
A Google career certificate. Okay, is that accredited in some way? Is that backed up by some educational institution?
In fields like IT support or data analytics or cybersecurity.
I mean, I don't know. I'm being sincere here. Is a Google certification now seen as something, weighty enough, substantive, enough to push somebody along in their career outside of Google? I don't know. Maybe Google certification is a big thing now. I'm not a tech guy.
Not just for jobs in tech, but jobs anywhere where these skills are required and important. And what we found is, in particular for underserved communities, what got in the way for learners to be able to complete this certs was life got in the way.
Life got in the way for underserved communities. Life doesn't get in the way for anyone in general. Life got in the way. What is the experience of quote unquote served communities then?
So they needed more support, wraparound support, whether it's job placement support, a living stipend, childcare support.
A living stipend? What?
A lot of our learners are parents.
A lot of our learners are parents. Well, okay, what does that have to do with one's race or ethnicity? Okay.
Many have more than one job.
Uh-huh.
And so we set up a $100 million fund, which is the biggest ever workforce development fund set up by any company. This is new, so we don't have results to show yet for it, but we're very excited about what it can do in terms of creating more opportunity, more equitably.
More equitably, as long as the people involved fall within the demographics you prefer, and only those demographics have quote-unquote life get in the way and they need help. Okay, maybe I'm reading between the lines of a cookbook here. I mean, maybe I'm just amped up after all these years. I don't know. It just... Why even put those caveats in the mix at all? Why? Why? These things affect everybody. Why not take on anybody who's either running a small business or looking to enhance their professional skills? Why do you have to caveat everything with non-determinative demographics? Underserved communities, minority communities, this particular race, this particular ethnicity. If you want equity in its actual definitive term, which is equality, justice, then why are you putting conditions on it that no one can help? Someone can't help what race they are. Someone can't help what gender they are. But you guys are putting up blocks and gates on these things. Why? Well, I know why. Because you have to make it look good. If you don't have the right mix, if the aesthetic's not right, then someone might accuse you of being a racist. So the only way to fix that is to be actively racist, to try to balance those percentile scales, right? Google. Your motto isn't "don't be evil" anymore, is it?
For communities, and we view economic opportunity as core to DEI. When you think about the market.
Then why isn't the E for economic? There's nothing in DEI about economics. Nothing. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's all aesthetics. You may think it's about economy. You may say it is, but that's not its goal.
March on Washington in 1963 was actually called the Job and Freedom March.
Yes,
so jobs
just celebrated 60 years on Saturday.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So that's the kind of work that we've done.
Then why isn't it called the Economic Jobs Initiative or something? It's not called that. Why continue using this moniker of DEI if that's ultimately not your goal?
It's a lot to really be proud of and setting that intention.
Is it?
And the impact that we'll continue to see and realize that you talked about, like some of these things, you know, we're still watching to see what the full impact is. Impact. You know, John, based on what both you and Juan just shared, where do you think DEI can go when you think about the shifts that you've seen in the recent past?
Well, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of turmoil for the next several years. As many of you know, there's a pushback in some states now. You can't use the word equity.
You can't use the word equity. In some states, you can't use the word equity. What? Let's see. Glenn Youngkin is sticking to his campaign promises and killing the word equity in Virginia. The Republican governor has removed that one word from education-related systems. Okay. And you can't use the word equity in some states. Okay, so Wisconsin GOP. Let's see, is Youngkin... He's Virginia, okay. The list of barred words or concepts includes equity, inclusivity, education, multiculturalism, and patriarchy, as well as social... that kind of cuts off there. Okay. All right, so removed from educational documents. Yeah, that's not going to go over well with First Amendment. I'm pretty sure. Are those things actually law now? Or is it just removing it from school materials? We want it from education-related systems. Banning word from schools. Okay. Okay. Well, so it's not that you can't say the word equity. It's just being removed from school curriculum. Not sure how I feel about that, because context is key, but okay.
And there's a zero-sum sensibility that if one group does well, another group does poorly.
Well, it depends on how you're assessing people on the basis of quote-unquote group, but okay.
And it's become a political football. And, I think all of us, but certainly large organizations like Google will play a pivotal role in helping us to potentially navigate this. And I think from our perspective, the work around belonging can help in that regards, because it's not belonging for some. We say, how do you create a world where everyone belongs?
You do away with assessing people on the basis of factors that are non-determinative of character or merit. That'd be a big step. Do you want to take on that one?
No one is other. That most of our...
If no one is other, then why do you have a distinction between diverse and non-diverse people?
Belonging for some. We say, how do you create a world where everyone belongs and no one is other? That most of our efforts around these issues have been seen as zero-sum. So it's really important to do the work that Juan just described, but it's also really important to tell a story, to have a narrative so people can see themselves.
Yeah, well, there's narrative and then there's truth behind it. Democratic People's Republic of Korea. That's the narrative. What are the mechanisms fueling that narrative?
That when we say diversity and when we say belonging, we're not saying whites are excluded.
But You're not? You're not. Okay, well, then tell me, what is the difference between a diverse business owner and a non-diverse business owner? What do you mean when you say someone is diverse and someone is not? What are you talking about except dividing? You can't even escape the logic of your own principles, can you?
And that's the implicit assumption that some people make it explicit.
Well, yeah, you're not making it explicit. You keep couching your terms with saying diverse populations or diverse entrepreneurs. You're the one doing it.
What are you doing for poor whites? In a sense, I think that...
What are you doing for poor people? Right, you started your own talking about how all men are created, it should be called people. You're right. Talk about poor people, absent any consideration of aesthetics. How about you do that? Well, you're the one dividing people up on the basis of race. You're the one putting a value, a victimhood factor, or a vilification factor on people on the basis of their race. You're the one doing that.
That's a legitimate question.
It is a legitimate question. Why are you doing it? What is your answer?
But doing things for poor whites shouldn't mean you're not doing anything for poor blacks.
Okay. Well, here's the common denominator. Help the poor, and then you don't have to worry about the aesthetic. What? I could repeat myself. But I'd be repeating myself.
or poor Latinos or poor Asians, is that everybody should have a place at the table. So I think we have to really sort of refine that and make it clear.
Make it clear that you're going to stop using race as the line of demarcation in consideration. Is that where we're headed? Because I would be overjoyed if that's where you're going.
That when we talk about equity and diversity, and we talk about inclusion, we talk about belonging, we really are talking about everybody.
No, you're not. You are not. You have... You just listen to Juan say specifically, explicitly, about how they funded people on the basis of their gender and or their race. You just listen to him talk about in the scholarship program how the majority of the scholarships were, as he highlighted, given to diverse students. You're not talking about that. You're not talking about everybody. You're not assessing people on who they are. You're filtering them on the basis of what they are. You can't escape it. You can try. You keep trying to do this. And I realize it is an impassable barrier to both identify people on their skin color or ethnicity, but then say that you're not trying to divide people. But you are. You can't escape it. Now, thank you, Mr. Tickletrunk, for the happy, smiley, lovely dog cat fox. Oh, dog cat fox.
Wow-wee! Wow! Wow!
Oh, that's a drunkle dog cat fox. Need a little drunkle in my life to cheer me up after this. Oh, man. Okay. The inherent contradiction is so obvious and so blatant. I always wonder, people that hold this worldview in their heads, how do they move through the world on a daily basis? What goes on in their heads as they're walking down the street, just encountering people of all types? How do they hold these two things in their minds at the same time? I'm for equity, but diverse people need help first. I'm not saying that anybody should be othered, but there are some people that need less attention because of what they look like.
But it also has some programmatic teeth behind it. So we're not just talking. As the country becomes more diverse, and
listen to this.
Frankly, as whites become less of a dominant number, it's going to be hard to sort of figure out, how do we do this and share?
How do we do what? And it's going to be hard to share on the basis of race? Roan Harushin, thank you. But Scribe, they are dividing people the right way. Yes. No, it's the correct way. It's the right side of history. It's the balanced way. We're fighting fire with the appropriate fire. That fire over there, that's bad fire. We have the good fire. Our fire is targeted universalism. If I throw a match into a forest, right, I am targeting that tree. But, it'll become a universal truth real quick in a dry environment. Is that what targeted universalism is? Is that what that is? Oh, boy. Thank you, Roan.
How do we do it with everyone around the table?
How about just putting a line of demarcation that is not determinative, or is actually determinative of someone's condition and not their aesthetic? How about doing that first? How about doing away with racial considerations altogether?
There'll be some people who say, you know what, if we don't have any blacks at this school, that's fine. They won't look at the structures and mechanisms. They won't look at all the things in place that have been keeping people back.
Would you be fine with a school that has no whites, no Asians, no Hispanics? If it was just a black school, would you be fine with that? If that was the rule, if you had some kind of term or something that encouraged people to look at this particular institution as a singular racial-centric institution, Would you be okay with that? Where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line in doing away with race as a consideration? When? Where? In what capacity? What are you fine with when it comes to that philosophy? And if you're fine with it in one philosophy, then you can't argue against it in any other. I'm sorry. It just doesn't work.
So I think that part of the question will be, can we really think of a world where everyone belongs? We have fixed Thomas Jefferson's apparent statement that, no, this is not just about men. This is not just about white people. This is not just about black people.
Where does white people appear in the Constitution? In the document you cited, the Declaration of Independence, where does white people occur? And also, again, context and the language of the time. Man. You know in like Disney movies, like Fern Gully and everything, when the construction company starts rolling in to decimate the forest, who's the big enemy to nature and everything else? Man! As in humankind. That's what it meant at the time. That's the context. They weren't just talking about men. Women existed as well. Man, as a reference to people, is what that meant. And this is the other thing. You're putting a modern interpretation on old things and calling yourself more moral as a result.
This is about everyone.
No, it's not. You've told us it's not. You told us that there are people that deserve more attention than others. You've already told us this. Stop.
And I think the role of Google and innovators, in a sense, this will be the most important innovation. The idea of a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy is really an experiment.
Well, first off, I don't know. Are you talking about Google? Is Google a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy? No. Are you talking about the United States? Is it a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy? No. It's a representative republic. Okay.
Can it really survive?
Do you want it to? I mean, I hate to ask that question, and I'm not necessarily speaking just to our speaker rhetorically, but there have been articles after articles lately, a lot of sentiments going out there talking about how America is on its way out. And I'm not even talking about like fringe publications here, although what that actually means these days is becoming more and more murky. Like articles from The Atlantic and CNN and other places positing, like, is democracy on the way out? Is America doomed to failure? A whole bunch of doomsaying. A lot of the end is nigh kind of talk lately. So I got to wonder, do you want this quote unquote democracy to survive?
If it doesn't survive, then all the other things we're doing really won't add up.
You don't want democracy, though. That's not what you're asking for. You want a situation where people are valued and given opportunities on the basis of what they are, while others are excluded or secondaried. You don't care about democracy. When you're talking about these things, you're talking about giving people money and opportunities based on a racial or gender class. That's it.
We don't survive in terms of our core values and institutions. And so we, for one, have been saying we want to create a world where belonging is the global norm.
I don't even know what you mean by belonging. Not everyone belongs everywhere else. If you're talking about equal treatment under the law, yes. That is purportedly what we as a country are working towards incrementally, bit by bit, day by day, year by year, decade by decade. You don't seem to want to acknowledge any of that because you're leaning on Dred Scott as an example of what people think or how they operate today. But that is what we're supposedly working towards. If that's what you mean by belonging, equal treatment under the law, then I'm right there with you. But I don't know if that's what you mean, because that's not what you've said. Thank you, Ms. Tickle Trunk. Casually becomes a multiracial, most prosperous society on the face of the planet. But does it survive? This guy. I don't know. Does it survive? This experiment that is America, has it survived? Has it survived World War? Has it survived Civil War? Has it survived upset and tumult and pandemic, political malfeasance back and forth and sidewise over a couple hundred years? Well, it's still here. Is it permanent? I don't think any country, nation, empire, anything is permanent. You have some long-lasting ones. Nothing lasts forever. But I tell you what, this country has and always has had, on the basis of its constitution and its origins, some of, I think, the greatest potential for long life as a nation and as an idea. But then we get to situations like this, where we have people talking about pushing ideas that would fundamentally contradict the progress we have made over the last couple hundred years, and specifically in the last 60 years or so, since the Civil Rights Act. So, I don't want to have to wonder if everything's going to fall apart, but man, there are a lot of people working really hard to make it happen.
Where belonging is a global norm. Now, just think about 75 years ago.
Okay. I can't, but I'll imagine.
The Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. Literally, when that declaration was made, people didn't know what it was about. There were arguments. It doesn't mean anything. People are starving. People need education. People need healthcare. Why are you talking about a Declaration of Human Rights?
I couldn't name how many times I've heard that document brought up. So, has it meant anything? I don't know. And this is me sincerely. I'm not a history major. I'm not a political science major. Okay, tell me.
And today, we haven't achieved it, but it has meaning. It has a guff.
Are you talking about globally? You're right. Every country is different. Different countries have different cultures and policies and laws, and they're ruled by different philosophies. And that has been the way it's been since time began. Wouldn't it, we're in the Beach Boys territory here. Wouldn't it be nice if every country afforded its citizens basic human rights? Yeah, it would. Is it likely? No. Can we hope? Yeah. Will the tides eventually turn in some of these other countries where they're demonstrably not nice places? Maybe. But, okay, and?
It has a norm. So can we do the same thing with belonging? And if we do that, it will be because people like yourself, organizations like Google, will be taking a leadership role. We'll be entrepreneurs in terms of making a world where we all belong.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what he means by belonging. I'm having to give my own definition because I'm trying to understand what it is that he's aiming for. If he's talking about total peace and harmony and everything else, hey, it's a nice idea. It's never going to happen. And not because I wouldn't want it to happen, but because I understand a little bit about just the world and people. The most you could possibly ask for is equal treatment under the law. You're not going to find anything, I think, better than that realistically. Because again, as I've said before, laws are confessions. They're confessions of the frailty of the human idea. And that we recognize these frailties and these failings in people, and we try to regulate them as much as we can through society. But outside of that, I don't know what he means, and I don't know how DEI is going to achieve it, given what is necessary for DEI to work.
That gives me so much hope. I don't know about all of you, but
Well, it doesn't give me much hope at all. Speaking of hope, I am, well, there's no hope that I'm reaching the end of the hour and a half, and I have Sister Scribe to hang out with shortly. So I am going to call it here. As seems to become a habit of the last couple of weeks, I'm going to pick this up tomorrow, because I have tomorrow off, in a part 2. So we can listen to the rest of this and find out. I want to get to targeted universalism. I want to find out, because that's the headline of this thing that really drew me in, aside from DEI 2.0. I want to learn about how targeted universalism is diversity 2.0. I get my brain can't even keep all the terms in line. Impact, everybody. I want to find out what is next for impact. So for my own reference, we're at 23:55 on the video. I'm going to pick this up tomorrow in a part 2, so look forward to that. I'll post that soon-ish, probably after I get back from hanging out with Sister Scribe. Keeverdam, thank you so much for the thanks Purple Heart. The thanks... was I wounded in battle? Is that what that means? I don't know. But before I get there, a couple more comments from you guys before I wrap things up. Thank you, Keeverdam, again. Lexi Mans, oh, joy. Well, we can stretch that to an hour if we compare it to a TEDx. Man, this is why I like panel discussions, especially ones that go on a little longer. You definitely get more room to maneuver. You hear a lot more, and it's less scripted, and you get to hear some of the finer details, or notably lack thereof. So let's see. Advocatus Diaboli, I am guessing they want to create a specific set of beliefs that would be universally held by all by force. Well, yeah. So like universalism, first off, it sounds like, again, it sounds vaguely spiritual and or religious. Okay. Targeted. It's like, okay, Catholicism. Let's take another ism for a second. And I'm not picking on Catholicism for anything, just the first one that came to my mind. Targeted Catholicism. Isn't that missionary work? Isn't that like sending people into, the heathen territories and bringing the good word? That's what that sounds like to me. If I just replace a couple of words, targeted ideology. Right? Put in any ideology you want, any ism. Targeted feminism, targeted Jainism. It sounds like missionary work. I guess we'll find out. Reslo Dream, do we really need a part 2? I do. I need a part 2. I need to find out how our Google executives and deep thinkers in corporate America see the future of DEI. In light of recent events, I really do want to know and be informed ahead of time, where do they think this is headed? And I want to know what the new strategy is for pushing this kind of thinking into our businesses, into our schools, into our institutions, and onward. I just, for my own edification, if nothing else, to be aware. Be aware. Derek LaRue, I hate when they use words like diverse or healthcare and mean the complete opposite. It's to this day, from the beginning of my channel to this moment, it has boggled my mind that people who advocate for DEI can at the same time hold in their heads that they are on the quote-unquote right side of history when compared to where this country was at before the Civil Rights Act. The same philosophies, the same mechanisms that they would tell us now are good things are the same philosophies that pushed racial segregation in the worst times of our country. Right? Like, okay, diverse versus non-diverse. We're going to set a fund up to help diverse business owners. So this drinking fountain is for you, and this drinking fountain is for you. I mean, you both get water, right? But we got to make sure. This is the problem. This is the problem. The base mechanisms are the same. We do not advance until we do away with evaluating each other on non-determinative factors. Racial identitarianism is poison. Poison. That's all I got to say. Anyway, I'm going to end it here for now. Tomorrow, there will be a part 2. I'll aim for noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time. I don't think I'll be stepping on anybody's toes at that point because I have friends who have YouTube channels and shows of their own that go on at different parts of the day. So that's what I'll aim for. Keep an eye out on Twitter. X. Keep an eye out on X for that notification. Or alternatively, you can join the Discord. I do have a Discord server. Let me get that link here real quick before I forget, as I often do because I get so rushed. And that's my own fault. In the chat right now, there is a link to the Discord server. And if you click on that link, you'll find yourself on the Say Hello landing channel. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word tells me and my moderators that you actually watch the stream and are an audience member and thus can become a member of the Discord. And today's secret word is, can you believe it? Impact. Just say hello. And say impact. And you'll join the Discord server. Impact. I think I'll put that on the thumbnail for part 2. I'll just put a big impact across it. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow if you're able to make it. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the fundraisers at the top of the chat box, thank you so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate it. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Leave a like on the way out if you would. Supposedly that helps out with the algorithm for my terribly search engine optimized channel. And beyond that, yeah. Oh, by the way, tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern will be the next episode in our book series, Book Review of the Vampire, where my friend Leonora and I are currently reading The Vampire Lestat. We are on section 3 we have just finished, and that is called, for those of you that might be reading along at home, I don't know if you are, but if you are, Viaticum for the Marquise. So we've just finished part 3. We'll be talking about that tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And with that, everyone, I hope you're having a good Sunday. Hope you have a good rest of your weekend, especially if your weekend is a long one. If it's not, I hope you have a good week ahead of you, work-wise or otherwise. I hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye. As soon as I find the button.